Hi, everybody. I hope that you are having a good day where you are. Thank you for joining us again for another live episode today of our Heights Baptist podcast. And I'm joined, as always, with Pastor Matt Hogan. And so thank you, Matt. Matt is our pastor here of worship and media. And we want to thank you guys. Again, we're live today. And so we've actually got a special guest in the worship center today.
That's true.
Her name is Connie Ochoa, and she is the decorating expertise around here. And so we're decorating for Summer in the Sun, which is our women's activity coming up. So if you hear any jackhammers, hammers, Connie's probably making a face at me at this point. That's just Connie. It's okay, right? Yeah. So,
it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, so thanks again for joining us. Today, we're going to kind of have a follow-up conversation. Recently, Matt, let's see, it wasn't last week, but week before, we had some missionary friends from the International Mission Board who serve over in South Asia join us. And they were talking a lot about different mission work and there. So we thought it'd be a good kind of idea to maybe sit down and talk about the value of short-term mission trips. Mm-hmm. And so if you've got questions maybe about that, something maybe comes to your mind as we're talking about, the value of short-term mission trips and what that might look like, drop a comment, and we'll be glad to answer that as we talk through that. And so, yeah, let's do that. So short-term mission trips, I know there are some people who say that they're not valuable,
right?
But we're going to ignore those people and say
That's
that
right.
they are valuable and not spend all our time on the negative Nancys out there. And so I know you've done several short-term mission trips. I've done several. Where have you been? Where have been some of the spots you've been?
So I've spent a lot of time. I've done a lot of short-term mission trips to Mexico, more than I can count. I went on like a 6 or 8 week trip to Poland.
Okay.
When I was a senior in high school, and then I went on another short-term trip to Arequipa, Peru.
Oh, nice.
When I was in college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been Bulgaria. That was my most recent one. My first one was Bucharest, Romania. And that was back in, 2002, 2003 maybe?
Okay.
Yeah, no. Yeah, may even been earlier than that. I'm bad with dates. I'm a history major, but bad with dates, right? So early 2000s. So Bucharest, Romania, Bulgaria. I went to Peru as well. We went to Lima and Trujillo. And so, yeah, I've done quite a few as well. What have you found valuable about short-term mission trips? Like if we were talking, and when we say short-term, it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, a weekend, just kind of depending on where you're going.
Yeah.
I've done things in the United States too, up to New England area. I've done some short-term mission trips that way and stuff. So what's kind of one of the things you see as valuable to that?
One of the things I think is really valuable is just that we are so incredibly blessed to live in the country we live in. And if you've never had the opportunity to travel outside of the United States, you may not have a great idea of kind of just how the rest of the world or how other places in the world lives and mm-hmm. functions. And so I remember the first time we crossed that border into Mexico, you're just immediately confronted with, there's just a very different socioeconomic reality that people are living in. And so if you get a chance to travel to Latin America or travel to the Eastern Bloc and in Europe or travel to other places, they have a very different standard of living. I think that's a healthy thing for anyone who grows up in the States to sort of experience.
Right.
It just gives you some context.
Yeah.
And also it's a great opportunity to just get a feeling for how other people in other places in the world live.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I remember we were in Trujillo. That was probably the worst poverty I'd ever seen. Mm-hmm. We were working in an area where a church from the city was starting a church kind of at the basin of a mountain. Mm-hmm. And so folks from the mountain were moving down from the mountain kind of into the valley to work in the city. But the land was government owned. Mm-hmm. And so they were the government had come and said, okay, if you can make like a little one bedroom house, we'll deed you that part of property and we'll run power to there. Mm-hmm. So when I say make, I mean, it's like biblical days, you're making your own brick here.
Yeah.
Type thing. And so it was a city of about 200 to 300 people, no power at the time, no running water, but it was like a cardboard city. I mean, that temporary housing, and this
Like a
church.
shanty town.
Yeah, it's like a shanty town. And so this church was trying to start a church out there. And, we were coming out and helping them do that for a week. And so that was interesting. One of the things I've always found interesting in traveling to several different countries is hearing worship
Right.
in their language, and that was the funny thing. The first time I went to Romania, that was my first international trip, and we were in the worship service, and I don't remember the song, and they're singing in their native language, but we knew the song because we knew the tune, and I just remember John 3:16 like became very real to me in that moment. For God so loved the world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, they're singing to God, and I'm trying to sing in English, following along. And I'm like, wait a minute, God doesn't just speak English.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's so valuable. I know up here,
Right.
that our God is a God of the nations. Our God is a God who calls every tongue and tribe and race and people group to worship Him. But we tend to sort of think of the church as what we see on Sunday morning.
Right.
So everybody's singing in the same language, and it's the people that we know and the people that so it's always exciting to be in another place to see God's people worshiping in another language. It's a cool experience. I remember the first time that I got to hear what Amazing Grace sounded like in Polish.
Oh, wow.
Like, and then of course it's been awesome to be a part of worship in some of the churches that I've got a chance to serve in Mexico.
Yeah.
And the other thing, especially for me now, I'm pastor of worship and media, so I spend an awful lot of time making sure that the visuals are right and making sure that the lighting is working, making sure that the live stream is doing what it's supposed to be doing. There's a lot of gear in my life.
Right.
And so there is something about worshiping with God's people in a cinder block room, or worshiping with God's people in a place that may or may not have walls. Maybe there's like a roof in somebody's backyard, and they've set some chairs out.
Yeah.
And just somebody's got a guitar and everybody's singing, and there's something that's very grounding about that.
Right.
Especially for somebody like me who spends a lot of time in the area of like worship tech.
Yeah.
And spending a lot of time stressing out about whether the lighting looks right and whether the media is functioning as designed. It's like this is what worship is about. It's God's people lifting up their voices.
Yeah.
All that other stuff is kind of extra.
Right.
So I've always felt like it was a really valuable reality check for me to worship with a group of people away from some of the typical things that we do on Sunday morning.
Right. Yeah, just the sheer simplicity of it.
Yes.
We miss that sometimes in our American churches because we want bells and whistles, and not saying we don't do things well.
Right.
But it's the simplicity of we were in Trujillo and being on the side of a mountain, kind of in a little one area. This church kind of built a little church, no roof yet, and the stars out, and one guy on the guitar, no PA system or anything, and I'm preaching with the translator, and it was really neat. So I want to thank you for joining us. If you're hopping on Facebook right now or YouTube Live, we are discussing kind of valuable things about short-term mission trips, and that comes off of our time 2 weeks ago with Dax and Rebecca Sharp, who are here from our International Mission Board. They serve in South Asia. And so we're just kind of going through and having that discussion of why we should do short-term mission trips and why those are good. So if you've got a question or comment, let us know. Drop it there in the comments section. Or if you're wondering where you can get one of the snazzy T-shirts I'm wearing right here,
there you go.
Get product placement. We don't usually product placement in the podcast, but we do have new Love and Lead T-shirts. We have various sizes and colors, and this being one of them. So you can hop on our website, heightschurch.org/register, and right now we are doing a pre-sale where you can buy one, get one free. And so make sure at the end of this podcast time, you go over to the website. Buy a T-shirt. It's never too early to start Christmas shopping, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we've talked about short-term mission trips, the value there in worship in the other language, being able maybe to just see what it's like where, other people live, and you see the value in all that we have. And I know sometimes all of us as Americans probably think, man, I don't make a lot of money, or I could have this or this, and then you go to a third world country and you really see how much you have.
You get some perspective.
You get a lot of perspective there. What's another good, valuable point of going on a short-term mission trip?
It's been a huge blessing to me to build some relationships with some people, and to build some relationships with missionaries that are working overseas full-time, and being able to partner with them. I mean, and then also being able to partner with national pastors and missionaries. I've got a lot of Facebook friends from the Nuevo Leon area of Mexico that I only get to see maybe a couple times a year, but I've been able to keep in touch with. And and one of the things I think that sometimes people can say, well, or somebody might think, can I really make a difference for Jesus in a week or in a couple of weeks?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that people kind of talk about when you're talking about like a short-term missions opportunity. And what I'm saying is, if you can build an ongoing partnership with somebody who's a full-time missionary or someone who's in the field all the time, or if you can build relationships with national pastors or church planners or with other people in the community, like if you get a chance to go back a couple of times, you can really build a relationship that lasts. And it's so that's been a real blessing to me, is just to cultivate some of those relationships. And of course, we can, as churches that are based here at home, we can support those people. We can support them financially. We can support them with our prayers. We can support them by, sometimes like we do, like we've collected like school supplies or supplies that we bring with us, for donations. There's a lot of ways that churches based here in the States can help. Especially if you're talking about something that's close, like Mexico or someplace where you're going to be driving instead of flying.
Right. No, and that's a good point. Is not only, I think, do the short-term mission trips, kind of bless those going, but it's also can bless the people that you're serving and going to. And so, our church for a long time had a partnership with Bulgaria and some things. And so, Grosdon, who's over there, we're in contact with him still. Our local association still does some things. Like you mentioned, you still keep up with some people. So there's that relationship building. And that's what's neat, is technology has really flattened our world and shrunk our world together. And for instance, on Father's Day this year, we had a couple who live in Turkey, and they are visiting the States raising support for a ministry they run in Turkey. So they were here in Texas, and the lady, the wife, knows my wife through special needs world and online stuff. And so they were like, we're going to be in the area. Can we come to your church and see how you do special needs ministry? And Sandra's like, sure, why don't you guys come over for lunch? So Sandra's like, hey, we're going to have this couple from Turkey over for lunch. I'm like, who? What? Okay, whatever, cool. And so we're sitting there at lunch, and this couple wants to start special needs ministry in Turkey. And the guy's like, hey, I'm from Albania, and I do some work in Bulgaria. And Sandra's like, well, you've been to Bulgaria, Lee, tell them about your time there. And so I was like, well, hey, I've been over there and did special needs camp. And he was like, with a guy named Grosdon? And I'm like, yeah, Grosdon? Grosdon from, and he was like Sophia? I was like, yes. And then he goes, well, Grosdon is a chaplain for the military for Albania, and I do that too. And I think we're talking about the same Grosdon. So we get on Facebook and we're like, Grosdon, and so we take a picture and we send it to Grosdon, and Grosdon's like, how, so I'm like, okay, a guy from Turkey, Bulgaria, Alvin, Texas, we've all been in the same room at some point. So that relationship building, I think, is so key for missionaries too, for the people who are there, that we can go and support, if it's just a short trip, that ongoing building part, And then I think sometimes, depending on what you do there, depends on like the level of blessing maybe that they receive or get, or the trips I've liked is going to churches that are already engaging in something like a church planning, that we can maybe come alongside and help them that week. There is, I think one of the pushbacks of short-term mission trips sometimes is there's the danger we as Americans come in to fix all the problems. So like if we go and build a church for a local community, sometimes that local community doesn't embrace that as theirs. They just wait for the Americans to come back and paint it and repair it and those things, And so I think good, healthy relationships there is what can we do coming in to support what you're already doing,
Right.
and help
Exactly.
you just take the next step, not do it for you, but just help you do that, and I think those have been good, healthy partnerships.
Yeah, I've always considered it to be very important to make sure that you're partnering with a missionary who's full time in the field, or a national church that's there,
Right.
and make sure that you do whatever they tell you to do.
Yeah.
Because this is their
Right.
ongoing ministry.
Yep.
And I can think of a couple of examples where that's just extremely important. You don't want to go in for a week and do something that might set back the ministry that they've been doing.
Right.
So I remember there was one Christmas we were going into villages to do church services, and then we always bring sort of these gift bags and give them to everybody. And the missionaries were like, listen, our rule is if you want, the gift bag, like, you got to be part of the church service. That's how we do this.
Right.
And some of us on the team were sort of like, well, but we have all of this stuff. We've got plenty.
Yeah.
There's plenty to go around. And those are, those are totally fine ideas to have.
Right.
But they're the ones that are there all the time.
Yeah.
And so you respect that.
Right. You listen to the guy on the field.
Absolutely, you
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah.
I remember another time when I was in Peru. They had us going to different school assemblies,
Right.
to do a presentation, and it was really fantastic. We had a guy on our team that had an amazing testimony. So I got up there, play a couple songs on the guitar, and this guy got up there and just started telling people about what Jesus had done in his life. It was incredible. But we had one day where we went from a very poor part of town to a very wealthy part of town.
Yeah.
And the missionaries, as we were getting out of the car, said, all right, everybody, like, you need to make sure that you clean yourselves up. You gotta change your clothes. You gotta clean your shoes.
Right.
And
Okay.
now, 19-year-old Matt found that highly offensive. I was like, you what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
No. You got to understand the culture. You're
Yeah.
a guest in that culture.
Right.
And you're there to support their ongoing ministry.
Yeah.
Okay? We were in a society where the class distinctions were much stronger than they are here in the
Right,
States.
right.
And they were like, if you're over in the poor part of town, all right, this middle class part of town is not going to listen to a word you have to say.
Oh, wow.
That's one of the things you have to understand about the culture you live in.
Yeah.
And so even though, again, 19-year-old Matt was not happy that they said clean your shoes. I was like, what are you talking,
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah.
They're
They're-
there on the ground.
Yeah.
You're coming alongside to support their
Right.
ongoing ministry. And so
Yeah.
it's always important to take your cues from the folks that are in country.
Yeah, no, that's good. So we got a question submitted in, so I'm going to kind of pivot us a little bit toward that. We've talked about the benefits of going. You get a different perspective on life, worship, hearing worship in another language, being able to partner with the missionary there that can form long-term partnerships. So the question coming in is kind of at Heights, do we have partners, with specific missionaries? And so for those of you that maybe aren't familiar with Southern Baptist, through your giving, we support close to, I think it's 4,000 missionaries internationally. And the one thing I love about Southern Baptist is they don't have to come off the field to raise their support.
Right.
By giving each week, we're supporting them to where they can stay on the field and not have to come off and raise it. But specifically partnership, we know our two friends we just had on stage, last week, Dax and Jennifer Sharp, that have history here at our church, that I've been in discussions with him on, like, how do we continue to build that relationship and how do we continue here to build that relationship with you there. And so we're putting together some ideas on that. And maybe that's Skype calls into a service here and there, or maybe, just figuring out how we can utilize technology well for that. So that's one answer to that question. We do some partnerships with local church plants like the Way of Life. I'd like to see us grow in that area. One thing before we kind of got on camera here is, the Adopt a People group idea. And that's something I'm talking with Dax about more in South Asia. Adopt a People group is essentially you adopt a people group that's unengaged with the gospel. So that means about less than 2% of that population of that group is Christian. So they're either unreached or unengaged, or they have just no gospel witness. And so what you can do with Adopt a People group is that's the group of people you can pray for. Then through our connections with the International Mission Board, they can connect us to a missionary who is working with them locally, where we can build relationships with that person, see what they need, see how we can come alongside of them a little more. And then I would love one day to take some short-term mission trips to that people group.
That would be cool.
So that's something we're kind of praying about, and I'm just asking God for some direction on, and we're discussing among some other groups.
We've also got several individuals in our church that have been involved in short-term work. COVID has really pushed pause on a lot of that.
Right.
I was having a conversation. The guy, there's another pastor here in Alvin that I used to go to Mexico with.
Yeah.
About twice a year, and we've not been in a while because of COVID. And we were just having a conversation a couple days ago about, okay, probably not this Christmas, but maybe by next summer we might be able to put another trip together.
Right.
Because you have to be aware not only of the situation with COVID here in the States, but also the situation where you're going.
Yeah.
And being aware of vaccines and passports and requirements and all of
right.
that.
Yeah. So another way, just kind of, if you're hopping on, we're having a discussion on short-term mission trips, and we've covered kind of their value of them, but we're going to wrap up here and just talk a little bit about how you can be maybe more involved in that and engaged in that. We are putting together some, I guess, larger plans, but just from a practical today perspective, what you can do. So again, if you've got any final questions, go on and hop on and put them in the comments, and we'll get to them right here at the end. But there is an app that our missionary friend told me about. It's Pray ASAP is what you would search for. So in your Google Play or your Apple Store, just Pray ASAP, and it's gonna be a red kind of screenshot there, and you'll see Pray ASAP. But that is through our International Mission Board. It's for the people groups in South Asia. And so what you're going to do every day is open up that app, and they're going to give you a people group to pray for, and a little bit of information on them. That's a great way to learn to pray for the nations. A good book is called Operation World that highlights different people groups to pray through as well, or the Joshua Project. If you just go to the Google and type in Joshua Project, that's going to have a lot of information on different people groups around the world that you can pray for. So just something we can practically do is pray, and that has a lot of power in that. What would be another way?
Support missions and specifically international missions financially.
Right.
So the big time that we do that as Southern Baptist is through the Lottie Moon Christmas offering.
Yeah.
The Lottie Moon Christmas offering goes all to international missions.
Right.
But it's also something that we do as a local church. We contribute to the cooperative program through the Southern Baptist Convention. And so every time you give $1 to the church, a portion of that dollar goes to the SBC and goes to international missions.
Right, yeah, that's good. And so Lottie Moon Christmas offering, that's usually month of December we do that, and that helps fund the missionaries directly, so there's that, and then just weekly giving helps, and to go, to think about, we are beginning now that, I almost said COVID's winding down, but I don't know how I feel about that statement, honestly. That's why I paused. I was
so why get us kicked off of YouTube?
Yeah. There's going to be some text messages about that one, yeah. So whatever COVID's doing right now, we are praying and discussing, some options, hopefully in 20, in this next year coming up, that maybe we can get back on some short-term mission trips. And we were having some discussions about that in 2019.
Right,
and then
before 2020.
Right, before 2020. And so we pushed those on pause. And it's been neat to see the ones we were talking about. I think God's redirecting us in another way now, which is cool, and so I'm excited about those. So there may be some opportunities coming up next year where you could possibly go on a short-term international trip. We're hoping to have a lot of those nailed down by the end of this year so you can prepare. So that's just something to be thinking about. So anything wrapping up here, I'm going to check the comments, and I don't see any new questions. So anything else for anybody?
When I think about the Great Commission, I think about go and make disciples of all nations.
Right.
And when he says all nations, he's talking about, people groups.
Yeah.
People groups is a good way to put it. And so figure out a way that we, not all of us are going to be called to go on the field full time.
Right.
a lot of us are going to be called to stay here and send and support.
Yeah.
And so look at ways that you can support the ongoing work, not just in your community and in your nation, but also across the world. And I think particularly short-term trips, there's so many different kinds.
Yeah.
Some people might think, I can't take 2 years or 2 months or 6 weeks off of work and go do a short-term trip. Well, I mean, I've been on a lot of short-term trips that were like a week,
Yeah.
or maybe 2 weeks.
Right.
And somebody else might say, well, I might not have the skill set, or I might not be, kind of physically fit enough to do what I typically think of as a short-term trip. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of short-term trips. There's a lot of different kinds of work that gets involved. And so that if that's something that you're interested in, there's a short-term trip out there that would fit your kind of your ability, your skill set, and what time you have available to give to the ministry.
Yeah, that's good. We got one more question, so I'm going to answer this one. Local mission trips. And again, I think as things are beginning to open back up to COVID, post-COVID-ish time we're in, those may be some avenues we might have more locally with things. Mm-hmm. But as we kind of sign off, so on a local level, I don't have a great answer for that at the moment. But, at Heights, we already do a lot of local things.
Right.
So I think locally, begin to think about who's around you. Who can you engage with the gospel where you are right now? And so we've talked a lot about going internationally,
right.
which there's a place for that, and that's good, and we're going to push ourselves to do that, but also to see the nations are here.
Right.
And who maybe can you engage right around in your workplace, in your neighborhood, in your schools, and just ask the Lord to open your eyes to that and to see maybe some opportunities here. So
the greater Houston area is one of the most diverse areas in the United States.
Right. Yeah.
There's more people groups represented in the greater Houston area than almost anywhere else.
Yeah.
in the States. And
right.
so if you can be a witness at work, if you can be a witness in the med center or downtown or at the plants, or
right.
There's a lot of opportunities for folks that may live somewhere else or maybe from somewhere else to take the gospel with them.
Yeah.
So that's definitely worth that. That's a way that you can do international missions locally. That
right.
almost brings the two concepts
it brings the two concepts together in a lot of ways. So that's awesome. That's a good final question to end on. I want to thank you for joining us today live for our podcast. We'll be back with you next week. And so if you are in our area, we'd love for you to come on a Sunday morning to a worship service if you're looking for a church home. And we meet on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., or you can find us back here online at our Facebook or YouTube page at 9 a.m. or 10:30 a.m. on Sundays as well. Again, product placement. If you're looking at that Love and Lead t-shirt I have on and thinking, man, I need to get me one of those, we've got all kinds of various colors and sizes and color combinations. So you can go over to heightschurch.org/register and right now take advantage of our buy one, get one free online special. And so just head over to heightschurch.org/register, grab you a Love and Lead t-shirt. That's a good way to be a walking billboard for Jesus.
That's right.
So again, until next time, I hope you have a great week and God bless.